And let's now get back to the lead story of the day, and it is the COVID inquiry. It cost almost £200 million, and it suggests that thousands of lives would have been saved if we had locked down a week earlier. Let's get reaction now from the Shadow Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, the Conservative MP, Alex Burghart. Good morning, Mr. Burghart. Welcome to Morning Glory, and thank you for standing on College Green there, shivering your socks off.
Morning, Mark. Thanks for having me on. Beautiful day here.
Well, that's it. The sun's coming up. Hopefully that'll warm things up. We'll make the interview snappy so that you don't actually lose any fingers. But can I ask you for your reaction to the findings of this COVID inquiry? Because in my humble opinion, Mr. Burghart, it's an establishment stitch-up that supports the ruinous idea of lockdowns.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot to digest in the reports that came out yesterday afternoon, and to the point you're making, Mark, and I think everybody listening will be acutely aware of how much this is costing and how long it's taking. And the most important thing for me is at the end of it, we have a very clear sense of how can the government get better scientific advice at speed in a crisis, and how can we make sure that the mechanisms of government are effective enough that they can implement things at speed and correct for mistakes when they make them. And I noticed that last year, you probably remember this, in March 2024, a group of about 50 scientists from universities like Oxford and so on wrote to the chair of the inquiry saying that they were concerned that it wasn't taking a kind of holistic approach to the issue of things like lockdown. So if you're going to lock down, it's not just about lives saved, although that's obviously incredibly important. It's about damage to people's, damage to the economy, damage to people's well-being and their mental health and so on. And that really you have to have this kind of like overall view rather than looking at it from just one perspective.
Well, I agree with you there. I think that Boris Johnson was bounced into those lockdowns, Alex, and I just think that this COVID inquiry are living in a parallel universe if they think that if we'd locked down a week earlier, we would not have had the lockdowns that followed.
Yeah, I don't know that they say that. I think that, look, from the perspective I'm coming from, Mark, is that I remember what's happening, seems to be happening now this morning, is that there, as you say, there's accusations that the government should have locked down earlier. I think at the time, the scientific evidence that advice that the Prime Minister was given was to not lock down earlier, and that's why Boris Johnson didn't do it. But what we should really be getting out of this inquiry is an answer to the question that you're raising, quite rightly, of whether lockdowns were the right things to do at all. And I'm not sure that that's what we're going to get.
I mean, it feels like, to me, Mr. Burghart, a bit of a political witch hunt. If you look at the front page of The Guardian, too little, too late. Tory response to COVID crisis damned in report. Inexcusable pandemic delays cost 23,000 lives. This feels very politically motivated to me, given the fact that countries across Western Europe all locked down and all suffered, the resultant damage that followed, and they dithered and delayed because the virus was an entirely new entity. But they seem to be throwing Boris under the bus. Is that unfair?
No, look, I think that there's a kind of natural tendency to try and attribute blame and to try and work out who said what to whom and when, and actually, obviously there's a place for trying to work out what happened, but the most important thing is, as you say, it's like an incredibly rare event. We hadn't had anything like this since Spanish influenza at the end of the First World War, so it's about 100 years on, and we don't know when the next one's going to come. The thing that everybody listening will want to know is, if it happens again, are we going to be able to respond better in a way that balances the financial cost of doing so, the lives we want to save, the education of children and so on. And it really, government sits, whoever's in power sits over the top of all of these very complex decisions. You just want to make sure that whatever the lessons are, we've learned them, and it's not, we haven't spent too long working out whether if this person had made a slightly different decision at this moment, things might have been different.
Most definitely. Sir Alex Burghart, thank you so much for joining us in the shivering cold in front of the Houses of Parliament, and we'll catch up soon. Thank you for your time. Alex Burghart MP, Shadow Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster. Is this politically motivated?